Pledge of Allegiance. So I'm Drew Germanowski, I'm here. Jennifer Helton.
Here.
Laura Ray. Does anyone know, will Laura make it or?
She did respond that she was coming.
Okay, maybe she's running late. Okay, Tom Carochi, do we know if we expect Tom?
I didn't get a response.
Okay. Ann Spurk,
She will not come.
Alan. Here. Cheyenne.
Here.
Catherine McGovern. Janine, not here. Chad Heimbecker. Russell Sutton. Russell's here. Winfield Clark. Carol Schneider's here. And Harry Vitchik. And my pronounce your last name? Vitchik? Okay, great. Okay, with that in, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have to worry then? There's Laura. Guess that answers my question. Laura. Okay, were you here in January? Yeah, I was on your call, so yeah, so I have reached out. I hadn't met you previously, so welcome to the EAC.
Yes.
Okay, Chad's here. Okay, wonderful. Just trying to get everything updated here. So there was no executive.
Just want to remind you to put the mics on as you're talking.
Thank you.
Okay. And anybody in the, okay, we go silent. Thank you. I believe that one is on, so you can turn it, when you're talking,
Yeah.
turn it toward you.
Okay, so there's a green light on this, I assume there's a green light there. I don't see any lights. Okay, so one of the first orders of business that we,
It's up in the back. It's on. I think, yeah. Talking to it. No, you don't have to touch the buttons on the bottom. I already know that.
okay, so first order of business that we have on the agenda was to evaluate goals and projects for 2024. So Carol assembled this into a chart. When we brainstormed about this, people developed a lot of good ideas. And so then the one question becomes is we want to make sure we have an agenda that we try to follow by way of goals and projects. And so various people here, I'm sure, suggested various of these goals or objectives. So why don't we go through the list and try to get some sense of sort of the level of enthusiasm so that we can kind of not bite off too much and make sure that we have a realistic set of goals for the year.
May I make a suggestion?
Sure.
That maybe, speaking to the mic, that maybe we each look at three that we find most important, and maybe table this
And
so that we don't go through every single one, and like you said, we focus on what's more important over the upcoming year.
so you're saying each of us should rank three or list three and then see
Yeah,
how that comes out?
because we have a lot here,
Yeah,
and this could take quite a bit of time.
if we go through every single one, right?
Yeah, and that's why I was
That's not a
thinking.
bad idea.
Do you have an idea?
And I noticed there's a few of them that are like really actually redundant, they're almost the same thing, so I wanted to get a chance to put it in to maybe consolidate, like there's plant sale, and sell pollinator plants, so there's like three things that are the same, so maybe the list is a little bit smaller than it looks.
No, I was just gonna say, and another suggestion is each of us just say the three that we're interested in. Because like, I know I've already started because we missed February, and we were whenever we get after March, that's all. If it doesn't, either way.
Yeah.
So is the suggestion that the most recent one, just go through individual ones and in essence, like vote on whether?
No, I'm trying to be respectful of Jennifer's requests, and perhaps the suggestion is to go around and see which three you're interested in. Because like, I know I've started on one of them, so, you know, or at the end of the day, we're trying to save time. So whatever works easiest.
So you're suggesting go around the table with people list, I'm not hearing clear.
Correct. Like, you know, Kathy, which three do you want? Boom, boom, boom. Chad, which three do you want? Boom, boom, boom. Unless we're not ready, which is also possible.
Okay, well, I thought that's what Jennifer suggested too. So.
If you're tabling to next.
Yours works, that's fine.
I think she just doesn't want to get into each one and all the idiosyncrasies of each and every one. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe a ranking system would be good where we can eliminate some of these, or at least focus on the top priority ones. But are we going to vote on those now? Do we want to add up like a tally of which ones seem to be the most?
Well, if we just went around and each person listed three things, we could check them off and then there's going to be a process of elimination because some things aren't going to resonate. But the question becomes, are we ready to do that? We have to review the list and look at the list individually for a minute or two. Why don't we start there? Just take a minute or two. We can all sort of glance through the list and see what it is that that resonates with us. And then we'll go around. I think that probably would be consensus.
Two of these are C, correct? Designated in our agenda. Designated adopted road contact instead of spring and fall dates. That's right. Right.
True.
Adopted road.
Some of that.
I think you're right. There are some things that are very similar. So if
Like
when
the
you
speakers.
list your three things and you see that two or three things should be lumped together, that would be the most efficient way for us to do that lumping, I think.
Well, it kind of fits in, there's like projects, there's like the waste stuff, water, and then there's like the cleanups. I mean, like you can almost have like categories and then.
Right. And one thing is just, I think one thing we can address is almost a separate entity, which is the Adopt the Road cleanup. We've done that forever. So I don't think we have to list that as a priority for anyone because that's a given. So I don't need to say waste our time discussing it. We'll just establish dates. Are we ready to go? I'm going to start with you, Kathy. I know that you've
So,
been thinking.
well, I reached out to 3 different representatives. There's 3 different House bills that were out there, 579, 783, and 1322. All of those House bills were presented, and I don't know what happened to them. I mean, they didn't make it, but I don't know.
What's it referencing?
One's bottle recycling, giving money back, you know, the 5 cent for the bottles and aluminum cans, and one's on styrofoam containers. So I've started inquiring where is this bill, what happened to this bill, why wasn't it supported, you know, and then get the information, bring the information back to this group of what can we revitalize one of these bills and get them back up, you know, and get the committee. So that's one. The second one is the environmental justice one, because I made contacts with him last year. So my thought was have him come here and explain what environmental justice is, and does our area qualify or not qualify. And then my third one, I kind of take whatever's left. Because those two I already started on.
What was the third one,
I
Ken?
said, whatever one I get stuck with left.
Oh.
It doesn't.
Chad, do you have,
I don't know if it's specific, but it's, because there's a couple things here that seem like they go together for me. So 3 things that I feel interested in being involved with the most would be some sort of recycling awareness, like trash to art, that kind of thing, where you're taking garbage related and we're reducing consumption and we're finding alternate ways of helping our community get the recycling parts done so that our trash will be commingled. The pollinators, species, and the bats. Fauna, native fauna, and then also the native flora. Nature trails, informational sessions, hikes, those kind of things. So you can put me down to help me involved with any of those 3 kind of categories. Okay? However I can fit in. And that goes back to one of the items, I don't know if it's still on here, was to get the email set up so that we can start a Facebook page to get some information out. Which I don't want to derail the conversation, I'm sorry, but like today I saw on one of the Lower Saucon Township groups was this Next Tracks thing the school is doing, okay? Where they're taking the kind of plastics that are not being recycled currently. And so I'm strongly supportive of the kind of this thing, so I don't know if this is, I mean, it's already an ongoing program, but to be involved with this on some level. So I think this is a good tie-in. You know, it shows how I wouldn't have known that they were doing this without a Facebook post. So I think that amplifies that. So I don't know what we need to do to get that email done. I would hope that'd be something that we could just request and have done and not have it be voted on. And, you know, so. I think that was on here. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought it was on the agenda as well.
So,
We'll talk about that.
that's the other. All right.
so is the idea there to have the township assemble an email list of residents, is that?
Well, at least as a, well,
No, we were talking about doing social media.
Social
And in
media.
order to set up a social media page, you have to have an email address that goes with it. So
Okay.
we were thinking about having like some kind of email that was accessible to everyone,
EAC
however it
or
works, that's
township,
not.
Lower Saucon
Just,
Township.
yeah.
A generic catch-all email address that could be used as a contact point on the website, but is also for administrative permissions to set up.
Okay.
Just basically to let the public know what we have going as a group. You know, it's one thing to have the website, but people have to take action, where like if you're sitting there just scrolling away, it might pop up and generate more use for the cause. I think is the
But
goal.
there's an event going on this weekend.
Correct.
To get it out and start promoting it, like the cleanups of it.
And so, just to be clear, ultimately, basically, we're going to EAC-centric clearinghouse groups.
In a way, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And Harry, do you want to contribute, say, or I don't want to put you on the spot?
Sure, it has some ideas.
Okay,
So I think like you said, the trash network, because like one of the litter that is on the ground is not recyclable. And like, it's just gonna be going like a landfill anyway, which is a big point of contention that we've talked about here. Like, trash network is something that's like important. It's something that's important because it like takes something that's like ugly and like unsightly, and it turns into something really nice that, you know, brightens up the community. And like you said, the social media, I think is definitely a big deal. Because I mean, I'm a younger person. And at my school, I play tennis. It's not like, it's certainly not one of the bigger sports at my school. We had basketball, soccer, all those that are really big. But we had a school tennis Instagram account for the tennis team. And like, the person who runs it does a really good job. And I think that brings that, the tennis team to like the forefront of like of like the sport teams at your school. So I think if you guys set up a social media account, it could definitely make a huge difference. Like bring it to like people's attention.
So I'm going to refrain and go around the room and then and go from there. Alan, you have some of these I think you've recommended in the first place.
Right. I would like to recommend having a drinking water and well water discussion among ourselves. In other words, bring in information and email to each other so that we all are on the same page, and then have a discussion about what we think about it. And the next thing would be invite Drew to talk about recharging water beds. And then the third one is, well, maybe we can get, I don't know how, post-Penn State Extension to come out and speak on roadside dumps and water quality. Because roadside dumps put a lot of pollution into the water, into the groundwater. So those are my three things. All have to do with water quality and learning about it.
And just to be clear, with respect to both the groundwater and surface, groundwater water quality discussion and having me talk about groundwater recharge, you initially imagine that being something that we do here among this committee rather than a public forum?
As far as, as far as you giving a talk,
Yeah.
if you give it here, it goes out over the internet. So that's kind of like public.
Okay.
And any discussions that we have here, I just go out on the internet too, so we know. And as far as the Penn State thing goes, roadside dumps are important. I don't know who we could get to talk about that. Somebody put in here Penn State Extension.
They have a speaker series or something. There's somebody that talks about that if you go on their website.
Well,
So we could look into that. That's quite doable. Cheyenne, what are some of the three things that are your most interested?
I would be most interested in working on the social media stuff, just to kind of bring light to some of the efforts, that are being done. I'm also a geek, so I would be interested in reviewing the bylaws, taking a look at that stuff, just to make sure that, the mission is aligned with what's in there. And also the collaboration with other EACs and municipalities. I think there's a stronger point when people work together. Would probably be my top three that I'm most interested in. But in the others, the hikes and painting fire hydrants and stuff is kind of my
So in each case, we're sort of agreeing that we're willing to step up to do some of these things. You basically just did. I had an inkling that Alan was going to talk about the groundwater presentation and so forth, and so I'm all in for that.
Sure.
Yeah, Russ?
Yes, I'm into the groundwater as well, and also runoff from runoff from deforestation, because we've had an issue up where I live. They deforest about 100 acres, and we had runoff from that. Not really concerned about that, and I also contacted the state about it, and it's a long procedure. I'm interested in turning trash into art. I saw yesterday someone made a break, used it along the ocean where the sand is, and collected all the metal and actually melted it down and formed trash cans out of it. And it was pretty interesting. He made a mold. It's all, he did it all by himself. I was impressed with it. But he recycled all this metal and made a circular trash can and put a spike in it so people would have trash cans and stuff. And I thought that was very interesting. And also interested in organizing a hike, for example. I'm part of Residents Responsible Development. The 20th, we're having a hike on the D&L Trail at 10 o'clock next Saturday. And it's a 3-mile hike. And it starts at the bed and breakfast there. and goes down to D&L, and we have one of the people from D&L actually giving a presentation about that whole area and also the Reddington area, because there's a lot of historical stuff there. So just wanted to let you be aware that that's going to happen next Saturday at 10 o'clock.
Okay. Okay, good. And are you also thinking then about leading another hike at some other point
Yes.
that we want to discuss?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be glad to do that.
Okay.
And so, my focus, I want to review the bylaws and brought some stuff, and I've already been doing the research on that, as well as reevaluating open space because it's really key. And then, back to, I think a lot of people indicated the recycle, better use of that. And so those are really my priorities.
Okay. And we have no open space, we have open space on our agenda tonight too, to begin a discussion on that.
Yeah, and we have to look at the procedure to know, reevaluate, and sure we focus.
Okay. So then, why don't we try to have a little bit of thought directed at how we want to prioritize these things. Now, some of it really, I think, comes down to, we've identified things that some of us want to bring forward or sort of take a lead on. So the natural way of doing it is to have everyone just think for a moment about, okay, are they ready to go? I suspect social media would be something that you would be able to get started on
Yeah.
basically immediately.
Yeah.
So we would consider that to be a high priority, right? Something that you could start on immediately. I would just speak for myself and say,
over to him.
oh, that-
Sorry.
I can speak for myself and say, with respect to both, let's just lump it together under hydrology, talk about both groundwater recharge as well as surface water runoff issues, and soil yield or soil erosion associated with the runoff. I can do that definitely at the June meeting. So if we want to think about that as a sort of a June priority, I think it's still high priority. I just don't want to commit to something, and I'm still a meat grinder for another month. And then, but June, I definitely can have something together, not only just to talk about around the table, but I'll put some slides together and so forth and illustrate it. And hopefully June won't be too late for things that are going on around us. I think we'll be okay. So I think we could, I'm hoping, Carol, that you and I can communicate based on the minutes that you're taking to try to put dates and priorities on the list as we discuss
As
them.
long as I can hear it.
Yeah, okay. Did you catch all that? Okay. And so not to stifle your ideas, Laura, but I just want to get a few of these things that just seem obvious that we can move on. Kathy, in the same sense, I would think you're already starting to look into the legislative things.
My role would be to bring the information I find back to this committee.
Yeah, okay. And then likewise, Chad, I think with respect to yard and recycling and trash to art and so forth, when, I would say we can keep that as part of a discussion of when you would want to bring something forward, how we might try to establish a plan to do some of this. I don't know if we could ever incorporate, you expressed interest as well, whether we could incorporate students in and do something, and it would take some organizing. So I think unless you want to jump up, I think if you think about it, and perhaps with the mindset of our next meeting, we can talk about ideas to do something formal. And then Laura, I'd like to give you an opportunity to discuss some items that you would like to see us move forward on.
Sure, well, we had already talked last year. It was like, I remember one thing we came up with was to rewrite our bylaws, so definitely we did that. It's not like a giant project, and it's stuff we can kind of work on. Via email, we can, so we don't have to sit and talk about it a lot, but once we have something drafted up, we can carry it and then see where we are, but we definitely want to get there.
So towards that end though, I mean, Jennifer expressed an interest, you expressed an interest, Cheyenne, you're interested as well. Does it make sense then for the three of you to be a subcommittee to work on this? Is that something you would want to do? Okay. So then I would basically say you can take the reins and start that process by communicating among the three of yourselves and finding common times. And I think you've already been thinking about it and they already have some information. So I see no reason why we shouldn't just have the three of you proceed on that.
And the open space committee, obviously, and we did get that on here. I know we talked about that a couple months ago, with Mark, to move forward on getting that reorganized. The native plants, I know Parks and Rec is working on the native plant idea for the project, for parks. So I'd like to tie in with them at some point. I don't know when we could do that, but I can see doing something with native plants and tie in with Parks and Recs and promoting that for everybody in our township. So those are probably the highest things.
So what I would suggest we do is I work immediately in the next week with Carol to then list what we've sort of discussed and with some general plan for starting date, who's involved, who's taking the lead. I'll let the three of you decide if one of you wants to sort of chair the subcommittee or take a lead, so to speak, a formal lead. And then I suggest we circulate this document via email amongst EAC members saying, here's what Carol took notes on from the stenography, as it were, the recording, and what I have notes on, and then just circulate it as a working document over between now, certainly the next meeting, so that we can, at the next meeting, formalize and say, yes, this is what we're going to do. And that also gives us an opportunity, and members who aren't here, to basically contribute as well with things that are missing that they find to be important. How does that sound? Okay.
Definitely, we could just keep all our other ideas on the list.
Yeah.
If I may, I was gonna make my number 3 then, I'm gonna find information about hosting a large appliance day and hosting a tire deposit day. I think every township needs those, but I imagine you're gonna have to contract with a company, and we're gonna have to pay them, I'm assuming.
They're not cheap anymore.
And they're not cheap,
No.
so I mean, I'm willing to do the groundwork of finding the why, what, where.
There's
Then
a
it
company
has to
called
be-
RSS, check them out, that's who I used to do when I did it. And then it, RSS.
RSS. But then I would have to come back to this committee to tell you how much it's gonna cost.
Right.
And then it says, and invite other townships, well, I don't know.
So I've been working on, I reached out to individuals on the Bethlehem, EAC, as well as Springtown, and in one of our notes, I think last month, or 2 months ago, we talked about the tire program that we did at one point with Springtown, and so we can reach out to her, so. Then we'll just connect. Yeah.
And so I feel like some of that is where we're all talking about the same
Try to read them.
categories, like the same category. Doesn't mean that was wrong. But, like where it's the tires, or it's batteries, or it's household waste, all of these fall under a
Yeah.
recycling group, right? And so I don't want to lose some of these individual items, right? The electronics
If
as
you look
well.
at this, there's really like 6 categories here. There's projects, waste, discussion series, water quality, committees, and plant sales. You know, these generally, and then the,
Legal.
thank you. And then, you know what I mean, so that they do fall under categories, you know, that way when you identify who's interested in what, like she said, there's plant sales on here twice. Like,
Yeah.
but it's, I mean, you can easily like roll through here and say, okay, this is sales, this is, you know, waste management, company, you know what I mean?
So this is a spreadsheet we can edit,
Let me ask
and we're
this.
gonna put in,
Well, I think what we can do is, myself working with Carol, make the first cut, grouping some of these things together.
Putting
that
which
fit
names
together,
next to
yes,
what.
And make it, sort of make this is a blank copy with ideas, into a draft copy of who's interested in working on some of these things. The next agenda item says set committees and project dates. That would be challenging to do just based on this conversation, everybody saying, raising their hand. So I think probably the most efficient way of doing it is for myself working with Carol to combine things, and I have a list of who's expressed interest in various things, and maybe some possible starting dates, with the exception of looking at bylaws as something that you can start on right away, and of course social media. So Cheyenne, you're the one that's beginning out of the box here with heavy lifting right away.
We're good.
But
Great, yeah.
So-
Need the address.
Yeah,
Access
so-
to it. But-
And hopefully, what we'll do is be diligent with this document over the next week or two, so that you can have feedback and say, oh, I think you have this wrong, or we're missing something, and then try to, by our next meeting, have everything lined up along these lines, as far as who's interested, what we're doing, what the priorities are. And that's where I think it'll be easier to make adjustments to priorities and start dates and so forth, once we have this boiled down into a list that is lumping natural groupings together.
So Carol, I asked this question before, but is there a way to share this, to have a shared editable spreadsheet in the cloud? You all have,
we can't give access to everybody, so it has to be one person.
it's not cool. Even view?
So
No,
we
I
can
believe
do-
everybody can view it, but only one person other person would be able to edit.
But we give us on a Google Docs?
That's what I asked the last time, and then,
It's our security,
yeah,
and, we were hacked a couple years ago, so there are things in place.
no, and I agree, that's.
If I did a Google Doc and shared with each of you via our emails and made shareable, then we would be able to edit
Yeah,
it.
there's nothing in here that's.
And then we would need the township, we would have to worry about the township getting,
Yeah, that makes sense.
anyone getting into a private server.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
Okay, that's the way I'll do it. I'll try to organize this in the first place based on a conversation, and then just share a Google Doc with everybody.
We know.
Okay,
Well, we could probably, should be able to copy and paste this out.
yeah, exactly,
That gives us better accessibility.
yeah.
And I think with Cheyenne's point with having categories, you can sort, we won't get rid of any ideas, it may just not have a priority this year. It could be something that can be revisited, so I'd like to.
Given that everyone spoke to one of these issues in the previous meetings, we won't eliminate anything, just move things down the list. And then that's another opportunity for us to discuss and reorganize things that way.
My problem is I want to add more stuff to it.
That's
We
good.
didn't get to talk since we had that online conference session.
Yes.
We haven't had
That
all
was
the ideas, I
really
sat
good.
in on that on Saturday.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm allowed to, but there was issues there about light pollution,
Yeah.
which is not represented on here at all, and we have all of these lovely warehouses coming up with
Right.
lights on all the
I
time.
thought the same.
And then homesteading subsidies for home farm. And to be able to get, so that would be good information to distribute to the community as well, for people to apply for
Especially open
state
space.
benefits.
Mhm.
So those are two issues that weren't noted on here that maybe we can add as something down the road. But personally, I think we need to get a calendar together of these community events, all of these different recycling things. We could do one a month or whatever you
One
want.
every quarter, maybe.
Quarter.
Quarter is probably a good way to-
With respect to though, that visual conference, we have that down here under updates, reports, EAC network, visual conference notes, so that's why I think we have a natural opportunity to talk about it.
Okay.
Get a report back, because I know I didn't participate. So we'll get to that a little bit further down the line, all right?
All right.
Good. So what that would bring us to is item C under new business, the adopt a road contact and try to set spring and fall dates if we can. And given that the committee has basically changed membership, you know, we almost have to reestablish who's going to take the lead on the adopt the road. So,
I don't mind doing what I have on the road that I do.
Of course, I have to make it be difficult, that's, you know. I had people reach out to me personally, I don't know how they got my email, but they are from White and Turner, which is the Lehigh Valley, where the Buffalo Steel used to be, the industrial park, Lehigh Industrial Park. So they asked me if they could help do a cleanup in either Hellertown or Bethlehem, and they have 25 people that are willing to help, but I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to respond back to them, so I haven't responded back to them yet.
right. And I don't know how to respond back initially either. One of the interesting things is trying to get it to wrap our arms around what we can do, given that we're not township, although we're volunteers. So in other words, what they were requesting is an opportunity to do a cleanup somewhere.
Correct, and they wanted to, you know, join with us. They gave me dates, April 18th, 19th, and the 22nd, which happened to be weeknights. But, so I didn't do anything, I just said, thank you so very much, I'll get back to you. Like, I didn't know what to say. I don't know how they got me, but
The
they got
township
me.
still has a list of roads, correct, Carol?
We don't have any available.
Well, we can add to them, correct? Because my road wasn't on it. I selected a different road, Roger made me take.
I asked Roger, somebody approached me about a road, a couple months ago, and he said we didn't have any roads available. So adding them is a little bit hard right now.
That's why I said the East Road.
Primary road is
That is,
Eastern Road,
you mean
and it's not a
designating a
regular.
new road as a possible,
Eastern Road.
Yes.
that you could,
Eastern Road is a
a
state
section
road.
like a mile long or so, or half a
Well,
mile.
there's a group that has Eastern Road already. I think the Wassagas Push, don't they have Eastern? Well,
Well, aren't they, isn't the,
They're
also, well, warehouses are,
That's Bethlehem.
that's Bethlehem, so why don't they go clean some roads in Bethlehem? Yeah, why don't they go clean roads in Bethlehem?
well, I think it's still nice if, I mean, because they
Yeah.
do work. I think it's nice, yeah, I think it's nice they're being considerate of the neighbors. I mean,
That's how I sort of took it.
yes.
This group is not the same people that are in, this is Lehigh Valley Industrial Park, I forget now, 3 or 2 or something, and ours is like 4 or 5, so, but they're, you know, they're sisters, so to speak, so.
I wonder if if the simple thing is to say, why don't you contact does Bethlehem have an EAC?
Yeah, they have one.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that-
So I wonder if it's say, contact Bethlehem EAC and focus on Easton Road. It's not our township and our purview to do that, but,
Half the side is our side.
Yeah, I don't know how you, I don't know how you write that.
That'd be a good place to do it.
So what needs to happen for us to be able to designate another section of road, like anywhere in the township?
It has to be
Adopt.
township or state, and if we have township roads.
I have a question. At what point do we blur the lines between, like, EAC wanting to make a recommendation to council to reevaluate what the roads are? Is that something that can happen? It might be a really ignorant question, I don't know. I'll ask it.
well, that's an interesting question. So what you're suggesting, Carol, I'd never heard this, that all of the roads in the township have people designated as cleanup volunteers?
All the roads that were in all the roads that are in the agreement have somebody that handles taking over the cleanup. When I talked to Roger a few months ago about adding additional roads, because we have more roads than what we have listed, he said that we couldn't do that. So for whatever reason, I don't remember, but if it's liability with where they're at, I don't know the reason being, but at that point,
Can we visit that to ask what the holdback would be, and also for a list of what the roads are that are currently, like, I know when I was cleaning up Lower Saucon Road, a neighbor from Crestline came up and told me there was garbage up there. He's like, it's dirt, and I was like, it's not my road. I mean, at the end of the day, like, you know, but if there's others that we can add,
council liaison can take that to council.
that's why I'm looking at Laura, I'm like, I don't know where that line gets ordered, so. put you back on the spot. Sorry.
Can we get a list like you're asking?
Yeah, the list is actually out there somewhere, I know I've seen it, of what our adopted road.
They're on the website.
Yeah, they're out there.
Do you have an
But they're all
attendance?
taken.
Yeah, they're taken, but are they being
Managed.
managed? And if not, because I know Flint Hill is one, not Flint Hill.
Flint Hill.
Wofford, what's the, Wanheimer,
Well,
and that's never picked up. And now it's not easy, but can we get a tally to say, okay, you're adopted spot, but you're not picking up? So maybe we can.
they may be adopted, but they might not be actively picking up.
Well, they would know, because you
That's
schedule
what,
it.
that's what I'm looking at.
I know.
I have a list of people. I have one in particular group that has not gone out yet and has not responded to my emails as of yet. So as far as everybody else, I have all other groups with the exception of maybe 2 that are listed. So, I mean, I have to give them the benefit of the doubt to get back to me and, you know.
So what I would suggest is that I request from you the list that presumably is out there somewhere. You have a list, and if you,
Oh, yeah,
if
it's
you
right on
can
the
share
website,
that,
too,
but
so,
what
yeah.
I'm suggesting then as well
I
is,
can send that.
again, this is something I think we could add to our to-do list and look at that list and see whose the volunteers are. And try to, I guess in your records, you would have a record of when anybody cleaned their roads because they had to sign up to get the materials. So if you could also look at your records to see which of these sections of roads have indeed been cleaned up in the last 2 years would be maybe reasonable. That should be 4 cleanings, right, of spring and
Last
fall.
year, I can tell you off the top of my head, there was one road that was not clean, one route that did not go out.
Okay, so just one.
And I'm a pest. So,
Okay, so I think that's something we could put on our schedule to accomplish, to get a better grip around this, on this and see which roads are not part of the scheduled cleanup. And then, yeah, I guess, I didn't realize this till you were saying, the complication is that Easton Road is one side of the road, Lower Saucon's property, and then Bethlehem's towards the warehouse. And so
She
that's
said that's a state road.
That's only
That's a
between-
state.
That's only
It's a state
between
road.
the east branch of the Saucon Creek and
State doesn't.
Scotland and Howard.
Right, okay.
After you cross the Saucon Creek, it's all LSD.
Keep Pennsylvania beautiful.
Well, I would like to know how we can add
And not
sections of
UCDs.
roadway as well. If we have the community here, you know, that wants to be
No,
involved.
that's what
and we're
getting the
gonna turn
list.
it away because we don't have a designation on something, I'd like to get that changed.
No, but the starting point would be to see what roads we do have and have assigned. And then by default, we would know which roads are not. And then I think it's something we could recommend to council to get an understanding of how these designations occurred in the first place and how easy or difficult or what steps we need to take in order to add roads to the road cleanup list.
Now, is this limited to just roadways, what about waterways?
Well, I don't know of anybody who does that.
Top of creek.
In other words, adopt a creek. I mean, what I can tell you informally, at Lafayette College, we do earth week cleanups on the Bushkill Creek, but it's not part of any formal program other than just a few people getting together, organizing, getting the volunteer student groups, making sure plant operations is going to pick up the material that gets collected. That's where it gets to be challenging to do something like waterways. I'm sure the township has never done that, and that would be another conversation.
Another group I was with did it in Allentown, the city of Allentown, DC and Harvard, whatever. So here's some sections, there were some canal areas
Right.
along the Lehigh River that we cleaned out, and some other, small tributaries. So that's another option within here that doesn't have to be limited to just roadways.
Right, so I think we'll lump that all together then with the road and creek cleanup.
I just pulled the list from the website and emailed it. I replied to Carol's email that had 12 of us on it. That's everybody that's in it, right? So everybody has it just for efficiency.
Okay.
So those are 23.
So along the same line, this just joggled my memories of Parks and Rec last night. They talked about, they would like to maybe discuss doing adopt a trail section type of thing. It's not necessarily litter, although I guess there is some litter, but more for brush and debris removal, especially after the storms, to kind of push it aside and the trail, so, that was something they asked me to discuss here.
And what group was
discuss
that?
The Parks and Rec,
Parks and Rec.
yeah.
Okay.
Since the rail trail is kind of like in between, they have,
trail in Lower Town or?
in Lower Saucon, yeah.
Oh,
Lower Saucon
So,
Township.
goes through
I mean, parts are in Lower Saucon and parts are Shell.
Yeah, but we would be setting something up for our township.
So,
No, there is a rail trail committee.
Yeah, there is,
Yeah.
they don't have anything like that to,
Right.
you know, say, maybe you could do an adopt a road, adopt a trail section.
so what I think that one way to move forward is, again, is put this list together where we have people that have, as already occurred here, now indicate that they want to take the lead or step up. We'll have a column for people to fill in the blank. If anybody wants to take a lead and organize a subgroup to focus on that. I think that's one way to move forward because we will have a big list. So I'll do my best to make the first cut on organizing the spreadsheet and share it, and then we can add and discuss.
And I know that Saucon High School did part of the creek because my nephews were involved with it. And that was many years ago, but I don't know if they're continuing to do that.
And usually, I think when the school does stuff of that sort, they make the arrangements maybe through their custodial force or something to then, because it's one thing to collect material, but you bring it together somewhere and then it has to be disposed of. And creeks are seen sometimes to be worse than roads in terms of the size of it's junk, you know, a lot of times it's big pieces of metal and so forth that comes out. Certainly tires,
Yeah.
certainly tires.
Don't need it anymore.
So, okay, I'll try to get that together. In the meanwhile, one of the things that's a little more pressing too is for us to set the spring and fall road cleanup dates if, and I don't know who, that's usually my experience on this committee is I've cleaned up our road section, I think, twice. Usually I have conflicts on Saturday morning. So does anybody want to sort of step forward and do the material pickup and organize?
We can do a roll call or something to figure out everybody's availability.
Well, the problem is right now, Reading is not available. That road is closed due to putting in piping, so
Yeah.
I would not suggest that we do it in April, and I don't know when it's going to be done. Do you, Karen? Probably by June? Yeah, so we would have to pick it up in June.
Okay.
So the road's actually closed?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd be happy to kind of take like I said, I have another road, so I coordinate the two, and it's easy to throw the stuff in my truck. I mean, did you coordinate it last time? I don't want to step on your toes.
No, it's fine, yeah.
Work with whatever everybody's schedule is, you know what I mean, which is as far as like picking the stuff up, I can, like I said, hit both my road and that one at the same time.
So probably the best thing to do is put it on the agenda again next month, see what the status is of Reading Road. I didn't even realize it's closed. And then organize a date from there. Okay, the steering committee update on Cooks Creek watershed. I don't know what that update is. Does anybody
Yeah,
want to
that's
speak
mine.
to that?
I introduced it, and Cooks Creek is doing their 50-year anniversary, and they asked if we, as an EAC, wanted to participate, and everyone agreed. And so really, it's a free event down in Silver Creek Park in Springtown. And we'll maybe come up with like a table and some, literature that we want to do. And if necessary, I'm with the, Saucon Creek watershed as well, and we were going to work with an extension and bring in some of they have games that are, watershed type related, so we can always kind of piggyback together, because I know we may not have a lot currently. So, and so what I would do is probably,
What is the date of that, Jennifer?
it is July, sorry, I don't have it off the top of my head, I should. I'll get it to you all, my apologies. So really, it's July, it's on a Saturday, it's from like 10 to free. They'll have music, they'll have some lectures going on, so it's a pretty nice event. And so I'll get the date. and
Yeah, so
add
maybe
it,
once
but-
again, we can put that for a follow-up on the May meeting.
Yeah, and
Give
we'll
us
need
the
to maybe get a
particulars.
sign up sheet just to people who would like to volunteer, even if it's just an hour or two. And, you know, obviously we want to represent the EAC and, you know, we could talk about the litter pickup, some of our other projects that we currently do. We can do the open space and start, you know,
Right.
making that. You know, so really we could have a separate table, but just wanted to make sure we weren't getting this ideas generated that could be a good table. We could work with Saucon Creek.
All right, so Carol, we asked to put that on the agenda as a follow-up in our main meeting, and everyone can think about, I mean, in and of itself, the open space accomplishments would be good to share with people, for example, so that's a great idea. Clean up and, you know, the recycling events we've already hosted, which have been, they've
July
been more than
13th.
successful in terms of
Thank you.
the interest from the public, that's for sure. Okay, then the Bethlehem landfill spring and fall cleanup dates. So those are listed in the memo in our file.
Can I just add something that just popped in my head back up briefly, back with the trash? I sent you a link to the little litter trash program. Even if we kind of ask people to bring their trash so you can fill out the letters, you all can look at it and bring it back up next month. Maybe something that would be kind of meet both the need and fun. Just a thought. How I sent the link.
Okay, so at the landfill, that's an established cleanup, as I understand it. So that's almost a
I've
point of
never really
information.
had it, and I brought it up at council the one night because they have it in the host agreement for this free drop-off, spring and fall, never had any dates. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I couldn't taking the dates here. I couldn't find any reference that it had ever happened.
Yeah, I
That
think
was
it
my
has.
last question.
And the weather's the problem because to get access up there, if you have bad weather, you have a problem, unless you have four-wheel drive.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
You have to take yourself up there.
Where do you have to go?
Yeah, they're just opening and not charging for delivery.
You have to go, you have to go up.
Kathy's looking
Yeah.
for our
Yeah.
dates, there are 4 dates here, she would like 2 dates picked, that's what she's looking for.
But is she looking for our involvement?
In the dates, yes.
Just picking the dates.
I
Just
guess.
picking the dates or
Just the dates.
volunteering?
Nope,
I don't think
Pick
there's
the
any
dates.
volunteers.
That's it.
People have to, it'll be for people themselves to take it there, we're not doing.
But as it looks, you would pick up a ticket here and then show your ID, and they're basically going to accept the
the
trash. Is that
coupon,
the
yes,
idea?
they would accept the coupon,
Okay.
only issued to township residents.
Well, the 25th is,
25th is Memorial Weekend, which is,
So people will be gearing up to get ready for their own Memorial Day weekend
so I
plans.
would say, the 2, June 1st is the
that
better.
was the memory around that. That was the one when I was on 3rd through 12th.
And then the other challenge is when you try to look ahead to October,
Yeah,
It's
I don't know
almost
if we
too
need to
far
set
out.
that date right now. We can make that a TBD.
She would like dates so that they can put everything in print.
so
I don't
we,
think it's bad to just, I mean, pick a date, it's not coinciding with Memorial Day. We can pick one,
Yeah.
but October 5th and 12th, I don't think there's anything that is really profound.
Is better.
we know.
We can go with the 5th, because that'd be the first Saturday, just like June 1st, the first Saturday, maybe it's easier. to
Yeah, it's
remember.
easier. June 1st, October.
So,
June 1st is Saturday, as is the May 25th, so. Yeah, is there anybody see any reason to distinguish between October 5th through 12th?
No, through the 5th. It's the first Saturday, like you said, for both of those
So then we agree that our recommendation would be June 1st and October 5th. The idea being if there's a weather delay on the 5th, then the 12th would be a backup, I suppose.
Maybe we could allow it.
Drop off anything?
That's what I was wondering. Back to my tires and my refrigerator. Wow.
Tires you could, but remember like washing machines and stuff like that,
Well,
because I already
I
got
think
drop off
take-
dishwasher.
Anyway,
I don't believe there are washers or, and there's nothing electric on the list.
Enough electric.
It's their list that was on their website, that's, I have a copy of.
That was many years ago, so they
Yeah,
probably.
I'm thinking
No,
they'll take
no
trash.
way.
So I guess the township would have to request a list of what would be acceptable to
Right,
distribute to.
right.
I mean, unless that changes, assuming that didn't change. Right, what was the date on that, Carol?
4924.
Oh, okay, so that list is brand new, okay. So once they would set a date, the idea would be for the township to publicize this on the website
Correct.
and, okay.
And through our social
And I
media
was just,
channel.
well, that's what I'm jotting down now, so that we can keep like an open list, like a rolling list of what to put where.
It does say it here, ELC shall accept waste that can be lawfully disposed of in the landfill. So I think that means trash.
But not electronics.
No,
Trash.
no.
Recycle.
We'll get that on the list, and if you have the social media up and running, then we could basically publicize there. Next item on the agenda here is the open space subcommittee. Laura, can you bring us up to date on what council's discussions have been with respect to that? As I understand it, the idea was we were hoping to get the open space program back within the EAC.
I would say council really hasn't discussed it, but that was the idea that we talked about before with the manager. Because the program, I mean, the committee never got rebuilt or started otherwise outside of EAC, so we'd like to have the committee back, so we need to figure out if we have interest, who wants to be on it, who is trained, who needs to be trained, how we can do that.
So what do the rest of the members think about this? I thought that the EAC managed the open space program pretty well. And I for one would like to see this fall back under the aegis of the EAC, and we reconstitute an open space subcommittee that we could then, as we always have done, solicit volunteers from the township residents who would like to have their properties evaluated for incorporation in the open space program. And we have a set group of, in the past, we always had at least 4 members because it required 3 members to visit a site and score it. And that worked out fine. The other thing that I would suggest we do if we want to take control of that again, and if we made a recommendation to council and council agreed to that we have at least 4 people on the committee and make a point that associate members in the past, associate members of the EAC were able to serve on the open space committee. So that made it easier to have at least 4 people who were interested. And we were always pretty effective without going through flaming hoops to get at least 3 people together at a time that was convenient with the landowners. I chaired when I first came on board EAC, Ted Beardsley was the chair of the Open Space Committee. And then when he stepped down from that, I was elected to chair the EAC, or appointed, I forget exactly how we did that. And I would reach out to the landowners and find mutual dates that they were available, and then try to pull at least 3 of us together. It worked, it was easy to do that. So I personally would like to see the EAC just simply go back to the way it was, maybe with adjustments for improvements, but I think we had a proven track record. If there were complaints going on, I never heard them.
I move that we have the EAC reestablish the open space and have it presented to council.
Sure, do we want to put together our names?
I'm sorry, put together names?
Put together our names of who wants to be on the subcommittee and
If council, I'm relying on you, Laura, because to, get a sense of what council will be receptive to hearing. I don't know if council said, well, you're jumping the gun with giving us names, but I would think the way we did it in the past, people stepped forward. People that had an interest, I maintained an interest, and further, I would continue to do on that committee what I did in the first place was, because of my professional expertise, I always pull together the information on the geology, the soils, hydrology, steep slopes, et cetera, Also with the help of the zoning officer, would always share the plot from the GIS system in the township and the maps of the township, and I always consult my state resources as well, and then share that information with the community. So I would be more than happy to be on that committee. I'll be so presumptuous to say I would be happy to chair that committee.
to have you.
And so, I don't know who else would like to participate with respect to any training. I'm happy to do that. Okay, so, and I think it's probably a good idea that this is one of those examples of the more the merrier. I don't think we should limit it to 4 people, because then it makes it easier to get 3 of us together. Once everybody has, I could also just generate a small sort of training session, talk about what we've done, how we've evaluated things in the past. So I would be happy for us to make a motion that we resume an open space subcommittee of the EAC, and that we would recommend the following membership. And further, one last thing I would add to that motion is that we would start out with the most recent scoring sheet that the Open Space Committee used, because we did adjust it with help from people in the Nature Conservancy to better to score individual items in a way that was somewhat commensurate with their relative environmental importance. We had some items that were scoring at one point that probably would, demand a higher point total. So I would want to adopt the most recent scoring sheet. So Russ expressed an interest, Cheyenne expressed an interest, Jen expressed an interest, Kathy expressed an interest. So I would move that we forward that to council.
Second that.
Is there further discussion? And I think it would also be okay, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but I don't see any reason why, for example, Janine would, I would imagine, be interested as well. So we could add membership, I'm sure, as we move forward. And I think it's, personally, I'll just say, it's great to see so many people interested, because although we made it work with 4, it'll be that much easier to do it with more members. So we can bring it to a vote if there's no further discussion. All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Can I ask just one question? I don't want to bring it up in the
Yes.
discussion, but how is a list generated that went out to residents that had potential land that could be considered? Because there's property near me by off Flint Hill, and it's farmland, and the farm individual wants to sell part of that. I thought it would be a good candidate to maybe find out if he was already approached, or could be approached not to sell the land. I don't know.
Yeah, in the past, we basically would have the zoning officer look at the GIS and see where there were large tracts of land to begin with, or potential tracts contiguous to already, land that was already preserved. Because that's one of our scoring criteria, with the idea that if we could get adjacent properties and build more contiguous tracts of open space, that's better for the whole all the benefits of an open space preservation. And then in addition to that, people would come forward with recommendations from friends or knowledge of, as you're doing, a tract nearby, and then we discussed reaching out to those individuals. So I would say that in my memory, the majority of these open space proposals came from individuals, but we also used to routinely solicit by sending a flyer out, an informational flyer to residents of the township, and in particular people with relatively large tracts of land. Again, the word of mouth is always helpful, and the ability of people to talk to property owners that they know, because something coming from the township, certain times people just simply recoil and think that somehow there's something nefarious. Whereas when one of us would know a landowner and would talk to them, as always, right away, they're hearing from a friend or someone that they don't have to worry has some ulterior motive. That's generally the way we operate in the past. The other thing that I mean, the feel I'm getting in the room is great, because there's new people on this committee, and already it's the enthusiasm and ideas are palpable. And so I think we should approach this with open minds, so that we can have conversations about open space as a future agenda item, to discuss how we think it best to reach out and in essence advertise the program.
I have a question for Laura. How much money is left in the open space fund?
Pretty much.
You need money to finish an open space project. You need money to pay the people. So make sure we have enough
Oh,
money.
yeah, there's, $9 million or so.
But there was like 11.
There's
11,
there's a
7.
pretty good amount in there. We've earned some nice interest.
Oh,
That's-
interesting.
Yeah.
They broke it over the years.
I think if we're constituted as an open space commission, or committee, subcommittee, I think it would be appropriate early on to discuss our operating procedures and bring things to the attention of council that we think is appropriate, because we have to start by reading the original open space. I don't know what the appropriate word is. Charter is not the right word, but when this was pitched to township residents as something to put on the docket for a vote, it was presented with boundaries and guidelines. So we would have to start with that. Not, well, the open space committee should have a pickup truck available to you, So I'm being facetious with that, but I mean, there are boundaries that were established at the outset. And so we would have to refamiliarize ourselves with that and be respectful of that. And then if it made sense to consider, changing something to use some of those funds in the interest of serving the open space program as constituted, I think that would be a good idea to discuss that. For example, just real quick, at the park at Polk Valley, the residents have come forward and said, oh, it'd be great to have informational, educational signage along the trail, and that being an open space acquisition. Same thing with Yerger Park, that it might make sense to try to, to enhance those types of open space properties. And so I think those would be good ideas for future discussion.
One other thing that Drew didn't mention yet is that the open space program is a program established by the state of Pennsylvania. So there's a whole bunch of rules and laws and regulations that regulate it. I think we ran into one problem there. I forget what it was. But there are. But our program that we had, we were able to fall within all the rules and regulations. Oh, I know what it was. The thing was that they changed the rules so that money could be spent from the open space fund to maintain the open space properties. And the parks were considered open space properties. So they wanted to use money there to maintain the parks. I don't know if that was, if they ever did that.
They have, yes,
You said that
they have, yes.
we have done that in Lower Saucon. So that would be something for me to dig into a little bit more and become more familiar with that, because I don't, to be candid, I haven't followed the council meetings over the last year to know well, all I know is we were in essence disbanded, and what happened in the interim, I don't know, I don't have direct knowledge. Probably part of my homework should be to look into that.
Drew, I have a question. Do you think if you were going back to where the original guidelines were, is that something you can email to everybody that expressed interest?
Sure.
Instead of all of us kind of doing this
Right,
same
right,
research,
right.
that would be.
Yeah, no, that's,
Yeah, just that we all have it, we're not all
Sure.
kind of like scrambling, that way.
and then we're wasting time doing the same thing,
Yeah,
looking into the
right,
same
that way we
thing,
can,
so.
do social media, if you don't mind sending that, then we're not kind of wasting, none of us are wasting time, but that would you be
Yes, yes.
better term?
Okay, so that motion will be taken to council, Carol, to reconstitute EAC as part of the open space. I mean, reconstitute open space as part of the EAC, not the opposite. Okay, so the next agenda item comes, one of the members of our committee suggested that we did some groundwork to look at the code for junkyards and junk dealers, and I asked Carol to include it with materials so that we can become familiar with this to discuss this issue. It is kind of interesting to me, just as a bit of background, that we did bring this up a couple of years ago, and at that point, no one brought forward the information that there was a code. So, as I recall, we sort of ended a meeting with the perception that everything was copacetic, and we couldn't do anything about any problem junkyards or junk dealers. So I think it's great that this comes before us again for us to discuss. And again, Laura, any direct knowledge you have as a council member would be helpful in helping us understand what's possible and how this should be evaluated, monitored. I mean, some of the language in here I found interesting. That sort of said that somewhere here, any council member can go evaluate the operation of junkyards and junk dealers to make sure they're in compliance with the code. So that's a complete different set of circumstances than we were led to
This
believe.
is probably cut and paste from somewhere and they just adopted it. And it's been living this way for, so long, so. I don't think anybody from council's inspecting junkyards. Personally.
This is from 1964. That's what it says at the top of the first page.
It's in our current, administrative bylaws.
Unfortunately, I do have to step out, I gotta get my son to soccer practice. But just in looking at this, I don't know, maybe the violations and penalties of $600 would be considered as something to update.
Well, I think this is clearly, if this was first adopted in 5/12/1964, this has clearly been collecting dust somewhere.
That was amended, if you look on the violations,
That part got amended in
2021, but it,
Okay.
you know, not knowing what part exactly to change.
So that is the only thing that's been updated in this, I like that. What we collect in fines is the only thing on here. Nothing about microplastics, other chemicals.
So if I may, to your point, this topic was brought up to me at a council meeting. I go to council meetings. And this was brought up to me at a council meeting because there's people that are concerned. We do have a junk yard in Lower Saucon Township, managed by Swint, is what this all started with. There's some people in the audience that would like to talk. But the concern that was brought to me was, it's not zoned for what it is. We are not a zoning committee, I get that. But the concern was there's environmental issues with where it's all mostly metal is what it is. It's not plastics and stuff like that. So I think he's waiting to take it in to get money for whatever it's like that kind of. But anyway, where it is, it's not zoned that way. And it was addressed, I guess, it looks like it was addressed and then COVID came is what happened. The reason why I got involved is because I'm on the EAC, and the concern is the oils and all that stuff that goes down from where they are, goes into one of the residents' ponds, and it's an issue. So the whole thing was addressed to readdress the zoning concerns for swings that were in 2017 and 18, and then it just looks like it just stopped.
And I would say, when I think about this, I came in right at the last minute tonight, part because I wanted to swing by there and see if my memory was correct. And I mean, some things here that are almost self-evident, like boundaries and so forth. If you drive Apple Butter Road, you have to pay very close attention if you're driving up the hill, because if you simply stay within the lines, there's a more than 50% chance you're going to clip a parked vehicle there. So the fence line in places is shorter than a standard F-150 or GMC 250 pickup truck. So the setback boundaries, for example, as outlined here, no way.
And the person that gave me all this information is, from what I understand, and this goes way back, is that they were originally granted to park their trucks there. That's what that was supposed to be, way back. And then it looks like through the years, there's just been constant issues, so.
And with respect to our role, or whether this is appropriate for us to consider at all, this is an environmental issue, because if you look at the materials there are undoubtedly petrochemical bearing materials. Your average lawnmower, there's refrigerators with fluids in them, and air conditioners, and a lot of unimaginable things, because the fence is not an open chain link fence. But when you look in there, if you drive by, there's plenty of opportunities for hazardous fluids to be released. And I couldn't tell if there was any appropriate handling platform. All I ever see is soil in there. So normally when you process things like that, they're done on concrete and so forth, so that you're rupturing an engine or a motor or a refrigerator, and the fluids aren't just released directly into the soil. So I think there's plenty of opportunity for environmental degradation that justifies our conversation.
And there's no barriers around that.
Yeah, you don't see anything like even a normal siltation fence that you would see around a construction or development site. Yeah, it doesn't appear to be. So I suppose one way to consider this is if we agree this is a problem, and the question will become, I think, how to move forward, whether it's through the zoning officer. What are our thoughts here? And I think, and we'll have to wait to hear from public comment for a few moments until we also discuss the developer item that's before us. Does anybody wish to discuss this at the moment further, or wait until we hear public comment?
I think we should hear public comment first, so we get a better understanding, because some people don't know, they don't know.
Right. But I mean, public comment before we further discuss it. I don't know that we can skip an agenda item. Can we do that, Carol, do you know? Can we move ahead on the agenda to public comment and come back?
We don't, I don't know.
Um,
You can, the public's here for this topic, if you do that.
I would
Makes
prefer to
sense.
do that because everybody's
If you're
time is
talking about
precious. And
sheets, then
I don't
Makes
see any
sense.
benefit to having members of the public wait for us to go through anything further before they can speak. So I suggest that's what we do. And so any members of the public want to speak to this issue, come up to the microphone and we're happy to listen to you.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you for your help.
See, Jen.
You have to say your name.
My name's Tim Steely, and I live at 2485
Can you bring the microphone a little closer?
How's that? Better? I don't need to talk.
Flip the switch.
Where is it right
In
here?
the,
How's that?
in that back.
Bring it back.
No, it should work. No. Hold on.
This was a little time.
There's a button right on top.
I tried that.
We could bring this microphone over, right, Carol? Yeah. Just slide that over towards the camera. Oh, that's where we
You just gotta shake it a little bit.
Get scared, Carol.
My name's Tim Steely. I live at 2485 Applewater Road. The thing with the Squint is he has so many violations already against him. I don't understand why the township can't do more about it. I mean, he's not zoned for what he's doing. He never was zoned for what he's doing. It's an RA district. And, I mean, he's operating basically a landfill, a scrap yard, salvage yard. And he also keeps expanding. A lot of his, you talk about water runoff and things like that. It's all going down into Greg's pond. He lives across the street from me, and it's ended up in his pond. The other people that live up the street, Severn, he went to the effort to park cars on his property so Swin wouldn't keep spilling over onto his property. He's been notified by the pipeline many times because the pipeline runs through his property. He's not supposed to put fill on the pipeline or park cars or trucks. And he always keeps adding fill on the pipeline and parking on the pipeline, even though he's been told many times not to. It has been going on for a long time. When Kathy mentioned about the original variance, his father got that variance, Kathy.
I saw it in
Right.
1994
Right.
for his
exactly.
trucks.
For his trucks, right. And that's all it was supposed to be for, and he never got any other variances after that. And it is just.
He has, I'm sorry, Tim, he has several cease and desist orders here through our township, but they stopped in 2018.
He did have those.
Yeah.
Oh, oh, that, yeah, that's, but they never really issued a cease and desist order though, which I couldn't understand why.
It's outlined in here.
How do you
Of all the
spell the name of
violations.
this company?
SWINT.
There again, there was just no enforcement from the township. I mean,
It's our previous zoning officer, this was in our previous Township Manager, Leslie.
Well, I remember there used to be a car junkyard.
Still is, that's,
I mean, it used to be there a long time ago. So
Well,
maybe
they-
based
that
on,
was- that was
based on that being there,
That's up further, that was severed,
that up for,
just a little bit, yeah. that was
Most of
the
that
next
was
round.
cleaned out.
It's cleaned
There's
out.
just some
That's
ivy left there.
Right. This is just,
It's not really, I don't know what it is. It's not a commercial operation. There's a
It's
house
some
further
rural
down.
agriculture.
Other than this, there's further down a bunch of automobiles. But I think that was one individual, probably was planning to refurbish automobiles, I don't know what. But that's different than this. This is a commercial operation.
right, right. Yeah, he runs his business out of there. And just like he brings garbage trucks back, parks them there overnight that are loaded. You're not allowed to do that, technically. There again, the enforcement isn't there.
and it's zoned rural agriculture.
That's
That
right.
area is still rural.
Yeah, that never changed. Which is why his dad needed the variance even to park the trucks. But
So this was sort of a expansion under the radar kind of thing.
there you go,
you
yeah.
got that was the variance to park garbage trucks there?
Commercial trucks,
Just
yeah.
Regular trucks? not-
Trucks.
not Garbage trucks,
I think at that time you may have had 2 or 3 garbage trucks at that time.
and you still got permission to park.
Was that a recorded easement? Do you have a copy, was there, you said there was an easement for it or a variance?
A variance.
It's actually recorded?
I have to go back to all the roads again, but I'm sure it's in there somewhere.
I don't think the original variances are Kathy, but it was an original variance. I think it was 96.
94, 96,
96.
somewhere I saw it.
Yeah, okay. And like I said, that was his father.
On November 18, 1996, the zoning hearing was held in Lower Saucon Township regarding a variance application filed by Mr. Herman Swint.
Right.
It was voted unanimously, I don't know what that means, to grant Mr. Swint a variance from section blah, 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 to permit him to park commercial motor vehicles in an RA district.
Okay. Isn't there a number there too, Kathy?
There is 1608.03B and 9. He was going to store approximately 8 vehicles overnight behind a 6-foot fence that he was going to install. He would store, it goes on and on, he would store some recyclables at his property using 8-yard containers. No waste would be stored on the property or in the trucks. The fence would be installed 80 feet from the road. 2 40-foot long trailers would be located on the property for the storage of certain items. That was it.
So they don't do any of that stuff.
No.
I know.
The other thing, like Drew mentioned, he mentioned about hitting parked cars. Drew, you should see it when he comes back with trucks. He parks on the road all the time and moves stuff around, then he gets off the road. Meanwhile, people are going around and.
The garbage trucks are controlled.
But this one,
Like animals.
oh, yeah, they're on the shoulder all the time. While he's working, they'll park one on the road for 5-10 minutes to do something and, jockey stuff around. Yeah, that happens in the morning and in the afternoon, but there again, I think a lot of it is just lack of enforcement. I mean, he's under so many violations already. I just don't know how you approach it or.
And has the township been reporting these violations?
Well, it looks like they have.
Not lately or late, all in the 20
January
teens?
3rd, 2018, December 12th, 2017.
Probably not much since 2021, right, Kathy?
Not much, January 26th, 2018. Looks like everything stopped.
Yeah, no, they really didn't. I mean, I made a couple calls in between there, and whether they came out or not, I don't know about. Yeah, I'm not sure, but, I mean, Priscilla knows about it too. She's been by plenty of times, So
I don't know why. Do you know why it stops?
I just couldn't get anybody to follow through on it. It's like they were afraid of him or something. I don't know what he has on.
We got a new zoning officer somewhere in there. We got a new, after Leslie, a new, and when like there was a transition and it didn't get passed along,
I think you're right. That's exactly the era and time that it was. Until Chris left. and-
Chris left,
Yeah.
Leslie left.
Yeah,
Then there was probably an interim in there,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, and then COVID came,
right.
and I'm gonna bet you,
Yeah, that even one of those cases, or Kathy Swint had to get a lawyer.
I
and-
saw.
Right, and he was dealing with Link.
Link Treadwell, who's
Right,
that was
right.
on there. I wonder if that lawyer, Kathleen, I just read it,
Yeah,
what's her name?
It's master.
If she's even, still around.
who knows, who knows, yeah.
Do we have anybody else that wants to talk about
Rick, you
it?
have
I
anything?
did all the highlights.
Just
I
like
think you should come up and tell us about your pond.
Yes, yes, definitely.
My name's Gregory Boardman, and I own 2472 Apple Road. And like Tim had mentioned, I have a pond, and you had mentioned that all the area where he has all that fill, there's no silk socks or any kind of protection from that. And like Tim said, he just constantly adds on. And I bought my property in 2016, and since then I've worked on the house and just fixed it up a little bit. Water was always an issue getting in the basement, always, back for years, with the previous owner. And so that was kind of the first thing that I tackled. I dug all around the property, around the foundation, basically, put in the French drain, and was able to solve that. But still, I had to basically dig a trench, a dry creek bed, probably about 10, 12 feet wide, about 3, 4 feet deep in the front to control the water runoff every time we have a decent raining, basically, because it is on the steep hill where we're swinging. It is the steepest part of that part of the road. And so all that silt and sediment comes into play for me, unfortunately. It's filling the pond. I have had excavators, stuff, just try and keep up with some of the silt that's constantly an issue. And so it's just a concern for me to try and control the water, because it doesn't come into the house anymore, but it does overflow the pond nearly every year.
Do you actually see a stream of water leaving his property?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
you have a video?
You know,
Video.
I probably do somewhere, but I can work on getting you all that.
And the other question I had is, where does the water from your pond go?
There's several overflow pipes that go down into the creek behind.
It's actually a creek behind your property.
Yeah, there's a creek behind the
Is that
property.
main, or is it just a tributary?
I don't know, to be honest with you.
It does, but it's
I
been
bet
there
it
for
does.
Yeah, it's gonna probably ultimate drain down into the channel that comes off the landfill by, near the Ringhofer intersection would be my guess.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like wetland in there.
Yeah, and according to Tim, this is before my time of ownership, but Odell used to be able to mow the grass all the way around.
And it was beautiful, that's correct.
And now, like you said, it is like a swamp. Between my pond and Swint specifically, you can't walk through there without being 3 or 4 inches deep in mud.
It'd be a good place to take some tests,
Yeah,
see if there's any oil in there. or,
right.
you know, whatever.
There is a natural spring right on the edge of the pipeline there that Swint used to use, or not Swint, Odell used to use for his drinking water. And before the community water came through, and
that would be really nice to have clean
Well,
water out
if
of
there's a
it.
spring there, then you got wetlands.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the wetlands aren't caused by his runoff, they're just natural.
True, but like I said, in the past, Odell was able to mow all the way around.
He could be polluting the wetlands, that's probably what.
Well, yeah, if you look at the storm water, I can get a video of that. It's basically coming right down, funneled directly at that spring. What's coming off the I guess you call it, where his property abuts against the pipeline, but also out front on the road, that's equally as bad. It's just,
It's gotten worse because it's filled in.
It has gotten worse.
Yeah.
it's almost like it accelerates through his property. And it's just too much for the pond to be able to handle it, unfortunately.
Is any of the water from the road running onto your property or onto his property?
It runs through his property, and then I'd say a good portion of it comes into the storm basin across the street, and then it comes through the 12-inch or 16-inch pipe underneath Apple Butter,
And then
and directly into my pond.
oh, directly into your pond?
Yes, that is from the north side of Apple Butter. That side comes down and into that catch basin. But
The spring
also,
on our side, that comes from the spring on our side.
yeah, that's on the north side of Apple Butter. But on the south side, it also funnels over my bank and directly into the pond. And
There's really not any kind of a curve there?
there is not.
No.
There is not.
Do you have, well, Tim, or you have city,
It's, yeah, the city water stops.
Halbertown, Bethel?
Apple.
Apple.
Yeah,
So when was that put in? Did the garbage dump do that?
I think so.
yeah, that was a long time ago.
That's for tourists, okay? Do you have anything else that you want to share with us?
Thank
Do you wish to speak to this item?
No.
Okay, so, I mean,
Is Bobby here? Is Bobby here? Bobby.
He left.
so trying to think about what the appropriate thing to do is, it seems to me that this is a potentially significant environmental issue. And so whether we make a motion that to bring this to the attention of the zoning officer or township council, I mean, it would seem to me that this is a zoning officer
Yeah.
issue.
Maybe you can handle it.
Yeah, we can bring that forward. I don't know if we wanted to, if there's anything that I need to read through the ordinance, if there's anything in here that we thought we would suggest
In particular,
changing, not that it's easy, because, changing zoning, anything is a big to-do, but if there's something blatantly wrong in here,
well, I think that
it might just be
when I
more
look
that
at
it's
this,
not being enforced.
when I look
It's not
through this
that
today, for
bad
example,
here.
in section 103.8, storage, property maintenance hours, item A, all junk should be behind a fence, as specified in subsection B below, which fence shall be set back at least 50 feet from all lot lines of the premises occupied by the junkyard. That fence is 12 to 20 feet back at best, from the very edge of the road. So property lines are usually a little bit on a setback from the roadway to begin with. And so, for example, it's hard for me to imagine that that is being, here's on D, it says all junk shall be stored and set back at least 50 feet from any adjoining premises, at least 75 feet from the nearest edge of the cartway of any public road or highway. So that would be an obvious thing for a zoning officer to evaluate. So if we felt that we should recommend specific items to consider, that one's rather obvious, which would be 103-8, sub-item A and D.
And G might be a good one
And then item F, with respect to firefighting equipment having access That would be another item that I think is, would be worth consideration. And then,
So there's
So,
no pros. There's
I-
no pros.
I have a question. I found the Dunkin' Junkers in our bylaws or wherever, you know, but I think the fundamental question is that it's zoned RA. I mean, I think that's
Right.
more like,
I get what you're saying, that's,
Zoning and use are two different things.
are they?
So you can have, like, you can do with a special exception, you know what I mean, there's for a use variance, there's different ways around that,
So
so.
the variance is not being
Well, I
monitored.
I have a couple of questions, just from like, I mean, not that I agree with what they're doing, Randy and Cassidy, but, so it looks like this was an ordinance that was put in place in 1964. Now, you said it's been a junkyard for a long time.
Yeah, but you said it wasn't this property, it was something else.
It was adjacent, it's adjacent, that was separate and auto at the time.
Okay, well, that's what I don't know, but, so sometimes you run into an issue where things predate zoning, you know, so if a use was in place, and I would be a little concerned with like how that reads, you would almost have to adhere to what that says, you know what I mean? So if they gave him the variance, but you can hold him to what's in that variance to
That's
prevent it
what I
from
meant.
spilling
That's
over,
what I
yes.
meant.
But just attaching to just the zoning part of it is always kind of a slippery slope, you know what I mean?
But you can enforce the rules of the variance.
Correct, yes, yes. But when you mentioned about it being there for a long time, I didn't know where that fell.
I have a nerdy question here that, or some information to put into the conversation. Years ago, people's property went to the middle of the road. And it's only since the township started to get subdivisions and resurveying and all that stuff, that they required that your property would be back so many feet from the middle of the road, and now that's what you own, and now the township owns the rest of it. I wonder if he's using that to say, well, I can park my trucks here because it's my property. But there might be a road law that says you can't park on the road, you know, a different law that trumps what I was saying about the owner's property going to the middle of the road.
And I think your variance stated it had to be 80 feet.
Correct.
So it's defined as variance.
There's tons of space.
We need to enforce our code, and this is a repeated issue.
Yeah, a law without recourse is a
I
suggestion.
mean, and one of the
Yeah,
key
and
questions
this
is the land use practice here permitted in the first place?
Well, maybe we send it over to the zoning manager and let them come back to us that, you know, this has been presented, and then see the next move, because I think all we can say is give advice.
There's also a storage thing there. It says all gasoline, oil removed within 12 hours from arrival in said residence. I mean, I think there are things that have been there for years, and probably never here.
So a question is for us, what do we think is the appropriate action EAC? Does someone want to make a motion to determine if this land use is permitted at that location in the first place? And if so, to follow through whether the activities there are in compliance with the code.
I'll make that motion. Whatever you just said.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that we could put it forward to have council direct the zoning officer to go dig into this whole can of worms here and see really. Yeah, well, whoever they need, you know, whoever the appropriate people are, if it's the engineer, the zoning officer,
The zoning officer is
the
about zoning.
solicitor, might have to look at some of the documents that were drawn up and all, so.
So a motion,
Probably have a bunch of
a
research
motion
to
to
do.
direct this to township council to request the zoning officer and or township engineers evaluate whether this site is, this activity, this commercial activity is permitted at this location, and are they following the regulations in chapter 103, if they are permitted.
I think the site part of that, the engineering part of it and the environmental would be secondary to that. So let's just, you would assume if it comes back that it's not, then you would say, okay, hey, you know what I mean? I think that would probably be.
Whose job is it to determine whether or not there's violations of this thing? The zoning officer?
That's what I thought.
My concern is for the residents, that if you just get the zoning officer involved, it's pretty clear that it's, you know, that it's not zoned for what it's being used for. That's why I think it's important to also have the township engineering or engineering to see the runoff and the silts and the dirt and the, you know, those kind of things.
It's more one issue.
There's more than one issue, correct?
But it seems like the starting point is to see if they're in compliance with the zoning ordinance in the first place, and whether this activity is even permitted at that location. Because from what I've heard, it sounds like the only thing that's been permitted is a variance. If a variance was granted, that implies that even parking those trucks was not in perfect compliance.
8.
Yeah, but not
Overnight behind a 6-foot fence.
Okay, so you've made that motion, right?
Correct.
So we have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so I think that's the appropriate starting point for all of this.
So would it be wise to give Laura, like, backup copies of all the research here?
It would have to come from the person that received the fund, so I would have to ask first. But I'm pretty sure this is public.
That's what I was
Knowledge.
thinking.
Do a right to know request.
950 stores.
Has that been
Laura
done?
just started twitching.
Has that been done around here lately?
Yeah.
I'm sure this, no, you probably
I don't know.
what the zoning office does.
Well, they hopefully have.
People
some of that
typically
stuff.
should
I know, but to expedite it, I would think that individual wouldn't mind if there's
I will
stuff in
find
there,
out.
then.
I will find out.
Okay, so I think we're good there as a
Thank
starting
you.
point.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment on other items?
I would like to make a comment about your, about the use of the money that you have for maintenance. Mike Kiefer, 4310 Lower Saucon Road. So there's the golf course that you guys made into a park. Tons of invasive species that pretty much overtake that entire park. There's also some potential there to improve some wetlands. Because what you have, that Lower Saucon Road there is getting undermined from the runoff. Because when you build a golf course, you make it so the ball can roll. So it's all in belly sand. Yeah, it's compacted, except for your sand traps and river basin. So I think you should address that park. You're gonna lose the road. And I own a nursery up the road. And we bring tractor trailers down that road all the time. And either direction, the road's gonna fail. Island Park is gonna fall into the train tracks at the other end. To go back by the other way, the road's gonna fail because it's getting undermined. And there's some simple solutions there. You know, improve the wetlands, absorb that water management, get rid of the invasive species of trees, open soil up, put some good trees in, some, you know, stuff that absorb the water, you know, aspiration, just get some more trees in there. I saw they did some things, but.
Do you know anybody that could plant some trees or some,
I do, we probably don't have time, but
some non-invasive species in there that could, clean that up for the township?
I can help you, yeah, but, not looking for work. It's just something that I observe because that's what we do.
Yeah, that road. Some years ago, I don't know the exact date, but I'm guessing 2010-ish, sometime after Hurricane Ivan, the township contracted me. I was not involved in open space here or anything, and I was contracted to evaluate the erosion problem in that gully coming off of the golf course that flows down and under Lower Saucon Road, or Saucon Road, and made all those points that I had in the report, and it's in the township's hands, of the land use change there. That used to be farms, like your family farmed it. There was a farmhouse on that property, right in the center actually, so it was all agricultural land, and then converted to the golf course. And as you said, all of those things that sometimes hydrologists call that type of grass green pavement, in terms of its inability to have a high infiltration capacity, its ability to generate runoff instead. And so that gullying that occurred in there had been occurring in the first place because of the runoff, but then it was accelerated by Hurricane Ivan runoff in 2006. In fact, the irony of it is that slug of sediment that was yielded from the top of the slope flowed down through a relatively steep portion of the slope and was just conveyed completely through the channel, and then filled in the channel down near the bottom. And here's where the irony comes in. That we call the ability of a channel to convey a particular discharge channel capacity. Well, the sediment filled that channel in and reduced its channel capacity. So during big runoff events, it all flowed over to the field. Now here's the irony. That now supports wetland vegetation because of the overflow from the channel. And when I brought that up, someone said, well, we'll destroy a wetland if we clear the channel out. The irony is clear it out to its original capacity. So once the wetland became a wetland, there was a tremendous reluctance to do anything about it. Now, I don't drive that way very often, but water used to lay on that road and down by the intersection, which turns into a traffic hazard at any event. But if that water turns to ice in the winter, it's self-evident what the problem is. But when I suggested they do that, the response was, that's now a wetland. But as far as controlling the water in the first place, up on the top of the hill, that will be something we can look into. If we become the open space committee again, we can look in again to control the budget and what's appropriate for maintenance. And this would be more of an ecological hydrologic restoration project to do that. So I think that's a point well taken and an endeavor worth pursuing. I mean, ultimately, the open space, as I understand it, was designed to keep everything from being developed and living with the environmental issues that often are attendant to that. But if we really want ecosystem function and so forth, and hydrologic function to be part of this, I think it would be appropriate to evaluate that.
I think it would, and also $742,000 came from the DCNR for that project, and I bet you they would be very interested.
The mic over by her.
Huh?
And it shows here that it was done in October 2014, when it was brought in, and then of course it was converted to be countryside lane, grass trails, property that allow visitors to hike, bird watch, and enjoy natural beauty on this tract, which totaled over 541 acres. So, yeah, so I think maybe that would be a definite.
Something we can, something
We
can.
definitely
If we have the money,
I'm sorry?
if we have the money, we should do something with it. And there are people in the community, like the brother, that's a doctor, environmental engineer, specializes in hydration. So, yeah, I'm familiar with these things.
Again, at this stage of the game,
I think it's a great idea.
I mean, this is something we can pursue going forward, and particularly if the Open Space Committee becomes part of the EAC again, then that gives us a little more agency.
And I think if you spend some money there, people are going to be aware, they follow the money. They're going to be aware of the park, they're going to be more active in the park. Yeah. And I don't think it'd be too much.
Yeah, I think it's a great,
It's a shame. the second issue. Like, we have another farm on Buttermilk. There's a runoff issue. And that's gonna get this. It's a lot of, there's a washout that comes across, out of Butter Road. And Buttermilk, yeah, that's part of it. But, it was washing the neighbor's driveway out, the adjoining property. They asked if they could put a swale in on my land. I said yes, but they did not put a swale in. They just dug a trench, didn't stabilize it, didn't do anything. So now I have soil erosion in my farm. And it's coming across over the road, not going under the road. And it's going on to Fisher's farm. And it's a hazard anyway. Big sheet of ice. And now it's kind of my problem because I have the swale. So we kind of, and I've approached neighbor, like I've sent her emails, I don't know if Kathy has.
I don't know. There are people that bought property in Williams Township, but the driveway is in Lower Saucon Township. And they decided to revitalize this old, very old, like 100-plus-year-old driveway. And they decided that they wanted to use this driveway to get to their property instead of going up Texas Road and around in Williams Township. The driveway abuts Mike's property. I mean, they're right there. Well, there's so much water that comes off the driveway, and it's just a tsunami. And it just comes down, and somebody's got to get hurt because the water just goes across there. I mean, it is significant.
I know, I'm familiar, I live right up that area too, so I'm fundamentally familiar with that situation. And the gullying on that road, and I mean, it moves the big cobbles
It's
when
bad.
there's a big runoff. So
The problem is actually in Williams Township. So there's a few lots on the back of what would have been Brody's farm when I bought. None of that water hits, I don't know if it's detention pond, but none of that water hits that pond. So it's been buried around and it goes down through the hedgerow, and that's what the issue is. I wouldn't mind working with the committee to capture some of that water. I love that water in my ocean, you know, a pond or something. I don't want to spend thousands of dollars on engineering, have someone else engineer something that we do every day.
Right.
You know, so maybe table something there. So on that.
I would be interested myself in just having a conversation with people here in the township. But sometimes I'm reluctant to make motions to council on things at this scale because we've never done that before in my time on this committee, and I'm not sure it's in our purview to deal with individual problems of that nature. I think it'd be, and myself, I would want to talk to people here in the township and try to follow up on that. These are ongoing issues throughout townships that are hard to resolve. So I don't know what the precedent is, but I don't know if it's in our purview. I'm curious to look into it for my own edification to see what are the boundaries of the EAC in fact. Yeah, but I will follow through on that.
Okay.
Okay, one of the last items on our agenda is actually potentially a big one. We have plans for a sheets development that came around with the call to meeting. In fact, a preliminary version of this at the meeting that was canceled a month ago. And so there's a lot here to evaluate. And the one thing that there are enough here to pass these around? There are. So I'm just, we have them on No, you don't have this, I don't think. The EnviroTrack geologic report, that did, I was a bit confused by that because I couldn't find it in my phone meetings previously,
It wasn't, when I
but I know I read it.
I had it sent to
You,
you.
okay.
Because I read it in the.
I never thought to look at your emails. I kept looking at Carol's emails and saying, I know I saw this, I know I saw this.
She sent it, Carol did send it.
Okay, does everyone have a copy of this or would like?
I have one.
Yeah, pass this, there's one here. So I'll just cut to the chase and tell you the one issue that I was concerned about. With the development project at this site, of this scale, you know, it's appropriate for more so I think for the township engineers to evaluate it, unless anybody sees something that they want to raise. But I will raise this issue as something that I think we should draw the council's attention to evaluate, and that is the geologic report here, which is required, and in part is part of the carbonate terrain. This site's on carbonate rocks. Okay? It's on the Allentown Formation, and so that invokes the carbonate terrain issue. So the data set shows in Figure 5 in this EnviroTrack's report. They have soil borings on the site, and now I'm having trouble. It's funny, the computer one I've been working. Okay, so Figure 5. I'm trying to see if there are no page numbers here, but in Figure 5 shows the location of soil borings. There are a number of soil borings, but then they only report, for example, the depth of the groundwater at the site at an average depth of 13.75 feet below ground surface. I would prefer to see this report consist of logs of all of the boreholes that shows the stratigraphy, so they describe what the unconsolidated material is above bedrock, but it doesn't show the spatial distribution of the materials, nor does it show the elevation of groundwater in each soil boring. So if there's significant variation, indicating that it's at an average depth of 13.75 feet, in my opinion, is insufficient. And the reason why I'm concerned about this is a gas station that's going to have underground storage tanks. The underground storage tanks show up on the development plans as being towards the south end of the site where the bank building is currently, but it doesn't show what the water levels are or the stratigraphy in that location. Where's bedrock in that location? What's the depth of groundwater? Because if there is a release from the tanks ever, the depth of groundwater is going to be crucially important. And so I would think we should recommend, or I would make a motion, depending on further discussion, but I would make a motion that township request the basic information from these boreholes that shows the logs and the stratigraphy. Where does the sedimentology change in the vertical sequence, and how well do they correlate from borehole to borehole? And most importantly, the depth to groundwater below ground surface in each of these soil borings. Just thinking your way through in the simplest of terms, if we think, say, imagine that there were 9 boreholes and an average of 13.75, you can arrive at that average of 13.75 with a tremendous amount of variability from place to place. It could be one of the boreholes could encounter groundwater 1.5 feet below the surface. So by sharing the data as just an average, wouldn't give me enough information to be able to evaluate the development plans fairly, especially the location of the underground storage tanks. There is a misperception among some people that the underground storage tank problem is resolved because in the late 1900s into the turn of the century, all commercial facilities had to replace corrodable metal tanks with non-corrodable synthetic tanks. But Unfortunately, the groundwater contamination remediation business is thriving because we find a million ways to release gasoline from underground storage tanks, from broken pipes to, the list goes on and on. So I think it, particularly given that this is carbonate terrain, that a little more detail in the geologic report is appropriate. And specifically that, what's the depth to groundwater below the surface in each boring, and what is the stratigraphy in each boring. And I would request the geologist to create a stratigraphic section. All that means is to correlate the different units spatially in 3 dimensions. I don't know what the rest of the committee thinks, or would this not be something of concern?
No, at least I speak for myself. We would defer to your intent, your whole professional career. I have a question though, what you're speaking of. We look on page, I guess this is page 1, and this would be page 3. I don't understand what this means. For groundwater evaluations, the heading up here.
Okay, yeah.
Groundwater in the unconsolidated overburden is expected to flow to the southeast. So that tells me they don't know,
Right.
right? Is that what that means?
Well, it could. Here's the question, Kathy, as I would see it. I noticed that as well. So that would give, knowing the distribution of the different elevations to groundwater would allow you, I mean, the groundwater surface is an energy surface. We call it the water table in an unconfined aquifer of this sort. So, and we call the energy of the water table the hydraulic head. So the distribution of water surface elevation is going to also tell you the distribution of hydraulic head or energy in the system, which should indicate the direction of flow. One could do a cursory evaluation of a site and say, for example, on your property, you have Bull Run running through your property. A cursory examination would suggest that groundwater flow on either side of that creek is converging towards the creek, okay? And it probably is, based on the overall topography, where the wetlands are on the property, all suggest that the water flows towards that creek and converges on it. You can make that assessment and make the statement that it's expected to flow towards Black River just by knowing Black River's there. That doesn't mean that's exactly what's happening. Now, if they are making that statement also on the basis of their knowledge of the distribution of water table or hydraulic head from those borings, then they are making that assertion on the basis of 2 observations. What's expected based on the creek being there and expecting the shallow flow system to flow and converge towards it, but also they may be using the distribution of hydraulic head to make that statement. The problem from our standpoint is they're not substantiating why the groundwater is expected to flow to the southeast. Is it merely because Black River's there, or is it sort of corroborated by the distribution of hydraulic head in this shallow flow system? So by sharing the information on where the water table is in each of those borings, we get a better sense of whether or not that's being used as background for this conclusion. So I think that this report can be improved substantially by simply the presentation of data they already have. And that's what I would suggest that Township Council do, is refer to the engineers, township engineers, that they request as part of this proposal the data from the borings, the stratigraphy, and the depth of groundwater to determine what this assertion is based on.
800 so you really can't determine the water table from these borings.
Yes.
Because it's not a consensus, it's only isolated flows.
Right, but they also look at the overall, other groundwater wells or deeper wells, which is, to look at impacts. That's always one reason for them looking at the Department of Conservation Natural Resources Groundwater Information System. That's basically telling you where there are other wells that are probably deep wells that are tapped into the Allentown Formation, or in some cases, the unconsolidated material on top of bedrock, sometimes people just call overburden or regolith, or if they know exactly its origin, might use more specific terms for that material. The word regolith and overburden are just generic words for unconsolidated material. Could be weathered debris from the bedrock, it could be glacial deposits, it could be alluvium from stream deposits. We have names for all of the subtypes of unconsolidated material. On a site like this, I wouldn't think that they would bother to make the distinction and just consider it unconsolidated material, overburden, or regolith on top of the bedrock. But there's probably two groundwater systems here. That what exists in the unconsolidated material, and then the bedrock system. I suspect with the standard geology around here that the shallow groundwater is connected to the deep groundwater. The flow rates would be different and so forth. But I think that to evaluate the potential impacts of that tank field would benefit from knowing where the depth to groundwater is and what the hydraulic gradient, because the reason that's important is if there is a release for whatever reason, you're predicting the likely direction of movement of that contaminant. I mean, petroleum is going to mostly float on the water table. We call it an LNAP, or a light non-aqueous phase liquid. We all know oil or gasoline will float, but gasoline's a set of very complex compounds that in and amongst themselves have different solubilities. So at a typical contamination site, a consulting firm would go out and they would probe to get water samples, and then they would create what we call isopleth maps of the concentration, not of gasoline, but of all of the components, soluble components of gasoline too. So there'd be a benzene, a toluene, if MTBE, this won't be an issue at a new gas station, but we used to put MTBE in gasoline as noxygenate. So you would create maps for the concentration of all of these different soluble components. So whereas most of the gasoline will float on the surface, there's a significant component of soluble compounds that will dissolve in and migrate with the groundwater, dissolve in the groundwater below the groundwater table. So knowing the direction of flow is quite important, and knowing the depth of groundwater would be important. And I think evaluate these plans more carefully.
So did you get that motion then?
You have to shorten that.
So the motion is simple. It's not all of that rationale.
He says it's
He
simple.
did have at least said it at the beginning.
The motion simply would be to have EnviroTrack release the information from their boreholes that shows the depth to groundwater in each borehole, the depth below ground surface, and to substantiate the assertion on page 3 under the heading of groundwater evaluation that supports the assertion that groundwater in the unconsolidated overburden is expected to flow to the southeast towards the Black River. Is that based on data from the boreholes that shows the hydraulic gradient? That would make sense to them.
Yeah, it was just, I'm watching Carol and she's like, got her little hands
I'm
going
writing
right
down the
there.
time so I know exactly.
Carol, you
when to
always
go
know
back
you
to
can
it.
just email me and I'll clarify anything that you need from me.
Expect that email.
So do we have a second on that motion?
Jennifer.
All in favor?
Aye.
Did anybody else have issues with the plan? When I look at the engineering, it all seemed pro forma and standard.
I mean, I went through it. The one thing, I did drive around to find that retention pond, and that's an interesting little road. Yeah, it's hard to get to. Well, it's that side road, and the road's not maintained, but people live on it. Is there any concern with that? Because apparently for this, it was built for, due to the, obviously the retail, but then
So they're not, so I didn't pick up on that. They're just reusing existing retention pond, same dimensions and so forth.
That's my understanding, but I didn't know if anyone else read.
Yeah, in which case I would, saying that, I would, again, I think it would be appropriate for the township engineers to make sure that retention pond is sized and designed to match the current impervious surfaces and stormwater generation.
The man-made stormwater retention pond is located immediately east of the subject property adjacent to Interstate 78. The stormwater retention pond was constructed during the construction of 78 between Interstate 78 between 1981 and 1993.
Oh, that part I read, but I thought you were getting something from this too, because that, they have their
I
own.
got it out of there too, but I read it for me
Because
last month, so I was saying my brain, because I had to blow all that up.
But that was the comment.
Well, there's really no additional impervious surface, because like the shopping center is already paved over.
That's already paved over, so
So they have to meet new MS4 too, don't they?
I would think. I didn't read all of the footnotes on the plans for that. At a glance through everything seemed
Okay.
appropriate.
And that was just my concern.
Yeah.
I just was interested.
I'd be a little bit reluctant to make a motion without digging in more deeply.
We'll just make a motion that we want more time to review.
We could, but we had this and I didn't review it, so I,
I think this goes to planning again at the end of this month, because of that.
is Haas still on
Somewhere along
planning?
the line, for some reason.
Haas is not on planning.
Who, Haas,
Because he's a civil engineer, so he would pay attention to that routinely.
Colloquially.
our engineers may have already drafted a list, and it's not in here.
I would be shocked if they wouldn't have.
Yeah, because this has been
That's
around
usually
for a
something
while.
that they would pay close attention to. So if we have no other concerns with that, do you?
I don't see any details in here about the design of burying the gas tanks.
Right, they're just showing where the Penfield is.
Yeah.
That's true.
When they wanted to put a gas station in down at the Giant Market, we complained about it. You know, we were worried about the gas tanks leaking and all that. And because there's a stream that runs under there, which they put in a pipe. And they proposed to put it in a concrete container, like a concrete block. Would that be sufficient?
Well, I didn't see any, I thought maybe they weren't here, but, so there is no, I mean, that's another
I
question.
didn't see any detail of, you know, how they're gonna bury the
Because
gas tanks.
Yeah, the runoff and so forth was there, so let me just see something here.
State regulated, so they're gonna, state regulated.
Just so it's funny, it's 2 sheets with the distance. This one front, about the same.
On C-200, they show where the gas tanks are supposed to go. But they don't give any detail,
That's
any
one.
indication.
But, yeah, it's part of the mile, but it's still.
Star, automotive.
Oh, yeah.
And then right now, it's a Wawa.
That's their problem, they're doing building it, it's just advertising.
This is all over.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. It's up there. Okay. Order agreement on, yeah, the roads, separately, so let's see what she's out. Yeah.
They have a sinkhole mitigation plan in a place where they're talking about geotechnical details. They don't mention anything about the gasoline tanks.
So just show where they're gonna be, did you see that?
Yeah. So I think that's a missing point here. me try one other set of these plans and see. Because it's interesting, they have a lot of other of the subsurface plumbing and so forth, the plans. And pipe bedding in subsurface. We have the underground storage tank vents on it. Water main service line.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just giving you kind of sorry.
We won't give you the merit.
It's an
It's
EAC.
cold up there, like I stood up there and like.
It's preliminary final.
I'm not.
Preliminary final.
What did you find there, Alan?
Huh?
Did you find something regarding that?
No, I'm just saying, it said these plans are preliminary final. Land development. So,
No, I went through it. So I don't see in the detailed plans, I mean, they have subsurface storm drain plans, manhole plans, but nothing that shows the gasoline storage tank.
And I think we need to amend,
there's a note on here that says that should be clarified.
yeah, just to add it
Because
to
that's the
the.
most important part about the whole thing.
Codes and utilities.
Storage tanks.
A lot of times in this kind of a situation, they refer to a whole bunch of special plans, you know, for doing that. A whole book of detailed plans.
So I would be inclined to make another motion that they include detailed plans for the underground storage tank construction.
Agreed. I'll
Because
second.
again, given that this is in carbonate terrain, that by ordinance is identified as sensitive terrain. So, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Carol, same thing, or did you get that, or no?
You would be inclined to make another motion to do what?
I'd be kind to you and just repeat it? Yeah, that we encourage council to require that they provide detailed plans, detailed engineering plans for the construction of the underground storage tank, for the underground storage tanks. And we think it's crucial because this site is in sensitive carbonate terrain.
And it probably existed, just might not have, I don't know how they report it in our county.
I have one question. Can we have somebody pull, and you might be the best, I don't want to throw more at you,
No, no,
but
no.
can we have somebody pull what the state requirements are when they put an underground tank in?
I can find that.
So we can compare what
Right.
the guideline is to what they plan to do. So if we,
We have a code.
we have that updated.
Yeah, we just changed the ordinances.
For the underground storage tanks?
Last year, remember?
Yep.
Well, the township does, I'd like to see what the state requirements are as well. Just that we're
State
comparing it.
requirements.
Okay.
We changed it to.
Okay,
Wait, oh, is there any-
I did see that,
It's
yeah.
in our minutes.
Yeah, that was not that
Yeah.
long ago.
Yeah, it was last year or
If
sometime.
you pull what they actually are, so that comparatively, if we're gonna look at what they say they're gonna do, we can say, okay, the state says this, and we know they're going bare minimum, or they're going above considering what your
I can
target
get that.
total.
Yep. Okay, boy, we're running late here, but updates or reports, it's too bad now that Chad's up because the EAC Network Virtual Concert conference notes.
Can we just table that for the next?
For the next
I don't think
meeting?
it's going to because.
Okay,
We're done.
right.
It was phenomenal.
It was great.
I learned so much.
Yeah.
So we'll put that on next month's agenda. I think that's a great idea. Do we want to do a similar thing with the minutes, or do people go through the minutes carefully?
I went through the minutes and there's a correction on.
So we can correct them, and Alan's here, so someone went through the minutes carefully.
I read the minutes, I didn't see anything that,
On page 2, line 44, so, it's 50 years, not 500 years.
Changed to 50 years.
Yeah. They probably feel like they've been around 500, but
I have to say, it's nice to be part of an active EAC.
This has been a great night.
So I have something that we need to add. Can I say that now for next time?
For the next meeting.
Yes. Springtown, we went into a source water protection with them back several years ago, and they reached out to me because there's a PDF I have, and I can forward to everybody, or Carol can forward it to you, put it in our minutes. But they don't know if it was actually signed, and they want to regroup on signing it. And what it is their water source protection crosses over into Lower Saucon down, I guess.
Cooks Creek,
Cooks
for
Creek and
example,
all that.
they went in Springs.
Yes, they want to, one, see if we signed an agreement, and two, if not, what do we need to do to get it signed? So if we could add that to our,
The next month's agenda.
if we could.
Before we did, I was on the committee.
You were, and I
Worked on
have the
that plan.
PDF that I found on our site. I, reached out to Laura, but she didn't remember if I could say that. Probably don't put that in there, so I'm kidding.
was that where they were gonna drill a new well or something, and they spread the,
No, it was
So
just
Carol,
a
did you
general
get that
source
request
water
for the
protection
agenda item?
plan for,
Springtown source water protection?
Yeah.
Yes, it's called Source Water Protection, Springtown, Lower
I don't know
Saucon
that we
Source
can,
Water
you know,
Protection
it was
Report.
for them, not
It was for them.
yeah, so I don't know.
And there was a lot of items that were supposed to be done in correlation to it. I didn't know,
just remember one
So-
thing.
but I'll forward it.
They have.
Are we ready for a motion to adjourn?
In Lower Saucon Township, they used to get water. And is that spring gonna be included in their source water protection plan? If it is, that means that they have some ideas about what to do about the land around that spring. That's how
We'll
big it's
discuss
probably.
it. We'll discuss
Yeah,
it.
that plan's from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
10 years ago.
I think it's 10 years ago.
Yes.
But Laura has something that I think we need
Yeah.
to bring up.
So
Yeah,
about
social.
the social media, so the reason nothing ever happened at council is I was directed or informed that, you talking to the microphone now? Thank you. Oops. So the preference by the township is that we would not have full control or administrator rights over a Facebook page. They were sort of suggesting that we just put our posts on the township page. I would like to suggest we still have our own page, although the township wants to be the administrator of it. I don't really know that much about doing the Facebooks, if that would just mean we have to send all the posts their way for review before they get posted, or how exactly the logistics would work. But that was the holdup on not getting us an email address and all that.
One thing I would wonder is, usually, our natural inclination is always to say, well, if other EACs are doing this, we should just reach out to them. I mean, I would imagine the issues in Lower Saucon Township, the concerns of the township would be similar to the concerns that any other township has had. And then if we just simply contact the EAC people who are managing their website to say, okay, how did you overcome that? And then we might have an idea of how to approach the township and assuage their concerns. I don't know.
I mean, if we want to get going, that's how we could do something quickly or
May I
quickly.
add to that?
Please.
I think you're gonna find that a lot of it is probably maybe municipality to municipality, depending on how in tune they are. And I certainly understand where they would wanna know who's putting something out under the guise of the umbrella of a township committee. I think maybe what we do, you can actually schedule posts ahead of time on Facebook. So maybe that becomes something that we put together the plan for the following month, submit it to council ahead of time for approval, so that they can see exactly what's gonna get posted.
I don't know that council, I don't know
Or
that that was
whoever-
the plan that council has.
Whoever wants to
approved
see it, you know what I mean, and
I
then.
guess it wants to be looked at by
Well,
whoever.
Well, that's, I certainly understand it, but that, whoever wants to see it, we can
Right.
actually outline a calendar, because it's not gonna be something you don't post every day, because then you become like, white noise, correct. But I think putting together a calendar, a month or even, if we can, 2 months ahead, get it to whoever does wanna see it, and then, one of us can work with Carol and say, hey, here's what we would like to present. I don't know who would be the person to.
Well, Carol, can you give us some insight? I mean, things go on the township website, right? So someone's approving
Or the
it.
manager.
What
whoever.
advice can you give us as far as how we should approach this and who would want to have final approval?
Well, I believe this information came from the solicitor,
Okay.
so I.
Okay, good, let's give it to him to post.
Yeah, I don't think we need the solicitor to review it either, that seems like over.
No, but the idea of not having a separate EAC email address, that was upon the solicitor's opinion.
And I think that's, I totally understand that, because I guess you don't know who's sending what, you know what I mean, but just being able to.
So will you make the page using a?
It doesn't really matter.
Should email address, I don't.
Honestly, it doesn't really matter what email address, like the township can set it up under whatever they would want it to be, and then we send the post to whoever would be to share the,
So
yeah.
one way or the other, it seems to me that someone, me as chair and you as a person of the committee of one that's working on this at the moment.
Chat.
Chat,
Yeah,
right,
we
to-
send it then.
Maybe you should just arrange to come down to the township meeting one day and sit down and talk with the interim township manager
Sure,
and just see what the concerns are
yeah.
and what working arrangements
I think we'll be able to
possible.
work through it. I think, even presenting a separate page, as long as it was like the township, it's not us as a separate, you know what I mean? I think as long as it became the township seeing it, you know what I mean? And we can just send the ad copy and photos. Like I said, you can sit down once and you can schedule posts for the following year if need be.
That's what, I would suggest that you do that, Cheyenne, just come down and meet, arrange to meet with the interim township manager, whoever she would think is appropriate, and just have a conversation.
I can do that.
Here's the plan.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, all in favor? I knew that was going to be a landslide.
That was great.
So I would say this, thanks everyone, it was nice to come to you.